My husband graduated from Harvard, he's a real elite. This isn't the kind of wedding for a poor dropout like you. Don't you ever come near my husband again, you might infect him with your stupidity.
At my subordinate's wedding at work, I was insulted by a classmate of the bride, who called me a poor high school grad. As I remained silent and endured, she went on.
Seriously, you reek of poverty. Just go away, shoo.
Susan gestured as if she was shooing away a fly. At that moment, the groom came over with a flushed face.
What are you saying? She is.
At the groom's shocking words, Susan's face turned pale. My name is Karen. The only thing slightly different about me is that I was raised by a single mother. It seems my father divorced my mother for some reason before I was old enough to remember, and I don't recall his face at all. In fact, I have no memories of my father even in my scant childhood recollections. It seems my parents split up when I was very young. I have a brother and a sister. My mother worked multiple jobs and was hardly ever home, so I took care of them instead. My brother and sister are very bright kids, and they never complained about our mom working and not coming home, just accepting it as the way things had to be. Perhaps knowing how we felt, she tried to finish work early to come home for us. But as I reached high school, I understood. My mother was pushing herself too hard. Compared to my friends' mothers, she was thin and it was normal for her to have only one meal a day due to her busy work schedule. When she came home, she would cut her sleep to do the household chores. I wish Mom could rest a bit, but we need the money. I don't want my brother and sister to suffer. As I was lost in thought about what to do, I saw a job posting at school. That's it. I should work. Yes, it was a job posting flyer. Thankfully, my mother had let me go to college. There were more job opportunities for college graduates than for high school graduates, which broadened the range of jobs I could apply for. This was the catalyst for my decision to start working immediately after graduation. I learned money and we'll be happy. That was my determination. However, seeing how hard I was working on job hunting, some of my classmates started mocking me. I had openly talked about being from a single-parent family, not thinking it was something to hide, but that seemed to add fuel to the fire.
Look at the poor girl from a single-parent family.
I was laughed at from behind in the hallway. When I turned around, there was a classmate, Susan.
Nice, the poor single-parent family girl doesn't have to study.
Susan said that, and the others around laughed along with her. I still think I should have talked back then. But I was too scared by the malice directed at me from so many people and couldn't say anything in return. Susan threw cleaning equipment at me. It was so sudden that I couldn't dodge, and a broom hit my leg. Ouch!
Clean this up, will you? We, unlike you, have to study, you know?
She threw a bucket and rag at me too, and I ended up having to clean. Days like this continued. One day, when I came home, my mother was unusually back from work. As soon as she saw me, she looked worried and spoke to me.
Karen, are you okay? Did something happen? Tell me.
I felt like crying at my mother's gentle words. But seeing her tired from work and doing household chores, I couldn't bring myself to cry. No, I'm fine. Just finding job hunting a bit tough.
Karen, don't worry about job hunting. You don't have to work so hard. We have something to fall back on.
No, I want to work. I don't really like studying anyway. My mother didn't press further or ask for reasons. She told me to do what I wanted. I don't think we have savings. She doesn't have to lie. If we really had savings, she wouldn't have to work so much in the first place. A few days later, It happened while we were together in the kitchen at home. My mother, who had been talking with us just moments before, collapsed right in front of me, my brother, and sister. It was due to malnutrition and overwork. She had been so busy at work without any break that her body had been crying out in pain. Pushing through the pain and always enduring it, she had finally reached her limit.
I'm sorry, Karen.
My mother kept apologizing to me in the hospital. No, Mom, it's not your fault. It was my decision.
But dropping out of college.
Yes, I decided to drop out of college to work in place of my mother. We wouldn't have any income while my mother was hospitalized. Thinking about what would happen if she collapsed again, I decided to start working immediately without waiting to graduate. It's okay, I'll find something soon. Although I was determined in front of her. When I got home, I was filled with anxiety. What should I do? Finding a job that hires a high school graduate. I was actually desperate. Without a college degree, the job options narrow drastically, and finding a job that can support a family of 4 is nearly impossible. I need to find any job, even if it means juggling multiple ones. That's what I was thinking at the time. That was when I got a call from school, and my teacher asked me to come in. The next day, I went to school, but I was led not to a classroom or the staff room, but to a meeting room. Excuse me. In the room, there was a man with a calm demeanor. I sat down as prompted, and the explanation began without me knowing anything.
Karen, this is the president of KS Company.
Oh, hello, nice to meet you.
Yes. You seem like a bright young lady. I run KS Company. Here you go.
The president handed me his business card. I remembered the etiquette I read about in books and awkwardly accepted the card. Looking at the card, I realized it was a well-known major company.
I've heard about you.
Oh, thank you.
I would like to invite you to work at my company.
What? I was surprised over and over again. The man in front of me smiled kindly at my astonished expression.
How about it?
Yes, please, I'd be grateful. Incredibly, the president of a major corporation came to the school and offered me a job. I can't let this opportunity slip away. I didn't understand why he wanted to hire me, but as someone desperately searching for a job, I immediately agreed. Thus, I dropped out of college and started working. A month later, I began working at the major company, picked up by the president, Mr. Kent. Everything was new to me, and I struggled to learn the job. It was very unusual for the company to hire someone with only a high school diploma, and behind my back, people whispered that I might be Mr. Kent's mistress. But if I can't make it here, I'll have to juggle part-time jobs, and then I won't be able to support the 4 of us. Especially since my mother's health hadn't fully recovered, switching to part-time jobs would make it impossible to sustain our livelihood. I endured desperately.
Karen, could you please do this for me?
Yes, right away.
Karen, please take care of this, too.
Yes, I'll start on it immediately.
Karen, can you get 30 copies of this by this afternoon? Organize them and take them to the conference room.
Understood. My seniors and colleagues, not caring about my struggles, kept piling on work and menial tasks. I was constantly battling the behind-the-back talk and my life's uncertainties, working frantically. I willingly took on the jobs that others disliked. After all, I couldn't afford to lose this opportunity. I went to the company every day as if my life depended on it. Years later, this document goes here, that one goes there, All right, finished early today. I sighed with relief as I wrapped up my work. I had become quite adept at organizing documents. After several years, naturally, I got faster at my job.
Karen, is that you?
Oh, Mr. President, good evening. As I was leaving the conference room, the president approached me. He seemed to be attending the next meeting.
Good work. I've heard from the employees that you've been doing well recently.
Really? Thank you so much.
Yes. I'm glad we hired you.
Being praised by the president made me feel recognized and happy. Years later, my efforts were increasingly acknowledged by others. And then, after a few more years, I became a manager at the company. Through continuous effort, I earned trust from those around me and achieved that position. Until around then, I had worked fervently for my family. Eventually, I was working hard to repay the company that had employed me for so long. Then, one day, the president called me. Mr. President, may I come in?
Karen, welcome. I have something to discuss today. Please have a seat.
Yes. Years passed, and I sat in the president's office chair, which had barely changed. What is this about?
Actually, I want you to take charge of a company.
What? I couldn't help but express my astonishment. Can someone like me really?
It's precisely because it's you, Karen.
The president looked at me earnestly.
This company aims to support homes like yours. It's a company that helps single mothers, a company for women.
Listening to him, it turned out the company actively employed single mothers and was gathered by people wanting to empower women.
Because you've experienced hardships firsthand, I want to entrust you with being the president.
I was filled with anxiety. Can I really do this? But the president patiently waited for my response. I'll do it. Please let me do so. And so, I was given the responsibility of running a company. The company I was entrusted with was indeed a female-friendly workplace, as the president had said. Still, I found several areas for improvement and began to implement reforms. I actively hired single mothers as permanent employees and established a daycare and after-school programs within the company. We ensured that a child care professional was available every day. The company enhanced maternity and paternity leave, allowing employees with children to continue their careers with full Social Security and salary benefits. The ideal company I envisioned was gradually taking shape. As I was the one who became the company president, the employees were also motivated.
The president here really understands women.
I agree. It's so comfortable to work here.
I overheard this conversation between employees in the break room. They were talking about me. This boost in employee motivation created a sense of unity within the company. This led to the company's soaring performance. As such, the president of the headquarters had nothing but praise for me. Around that time, a male employee from the headquarters, Norbert, came on an assignment.
Nice to meet you. My name is Norbert. I'll be under your care from today. Please take good care of me.
His greeting was very polite, and he had an elegant demeanor that made a good impression. In a workplace already dominated by women, the arrival of a man of his age sparked gossip.
Hey, he graduated from Harvard.
Really?
Wow, it's my first time seeing someone from Harvard.
And he's single too.
Wow.
Given Norbert's gentle manner and communication skills, he would quickly become popular here. That's what I thought. However, after a few days, I noticed that Norbert looked downcast when he was alone. He would smile when talking to others, but his expression turned somber when he was alone. I wonder what's wrong. Is he okay? But men have their own issues, right? I was worried, but as days passed, I could see Norbert's face growing increasingly troubled. Finally, I approached him. Norbert, do you have a moment?
Yes, sure.
I started the conversation when we were alone.
I'm sorry. Did I make a mistake?
No, it's not that. I've noticed you haven't seemed your usual self lately. Are you okay?
Well.
Norbert's words faltered. He seemed to be struggling with whether or not to speak. I'm sorry. If it's personal, you don't have to talk about it. But as a president and as a person, I'm concerned to see you looking so distressed. Is the workload too much? Or is there a particular task that's troubling you? Please feel free to share anything work-related. I spoke gently to avoid any undue pressure. Trying hard to speak in a way that wouldn't hurt his pride, Norbert seemed to understand my approach, and he nodded slightly and began to speak hesitantly.
Actually, I'm feeling pressured.
Pressured?
Sometimes, when things don't go well at work, I hear he's smart but can't do his job. Is he really a Harvard grad? It's shocking and stressful.
I see.
I've always felt this way since I was young.
Really?
My family, well, my father was a company president, and we never struggled financially. So, a lot of people approached me for money. I've always felt judged by my title or wealth. I thought once I joined the company, people would judge me by my abilities, but it feels the same here too. It's like no one really sees me, and I start to wonder, what am I really?
Though Norbert didn't cry, he sniffled and turned away, as if trying to hide his face from me. He seemed on the verge of tears. Seeing Norbert like this made me feel a twinge of emotion. Everyone has their own set of problems, regardless of what they have. It's okay. Let them say what they want. You are you.
Yes.
I've been through a lot too, you know.
Really?
It was when I joined the company.
You went through a lot too, Miss President.
Yes. You were the president's son, right?
Yes.
I was a poor girl from a single-parent family. Listening to Norbert, I shared a bit of my past, but it flowed out as if it were just yesterday's story. My mother collapsed, and I had to drop out of college. I was constantly rumored about at the company. At first, they kept saying I was useless, questioning how someone who dropped out of college could be here in modern times. There were even rumors I was the president's mistress.
What did you do then?
I worked like mad. Just worked and worked. Because back then, I loved money. Just kidding.
Ha ha.
Let those who want to talk say what they want. They'll see eventually. I tried to cheer up Norbert with jokes and gestures. Whether I truly cheered him up, only Norbert would know. Regardless, I tried to be as entertaining and empathetic as possible.
Talking to you somehow cheers me up.
Well, you're talking to a college dropout who rose from poverty.
Ha ha ha.
The next day after talking with Norbert became noticeably brighter, as if he had transformed into a different person. He talked with a beaming smile, quickly devising solutions whenever there were mistakes at work. The communication with his colleagues, which had been a concern, gradually improved as well. I'm glad Norbert is feeling better. Eventually, I could even hear him humming to himself when he was alone. I was happy to have been able to help an employee. From then on, Norbert's work went smoothly. In just half a year at the company, his efforts were recognized, and he was transferred to the headquarters. I was as happy for him as if it were my own accomplishment.
Miss President.
Norbert, good work.
President, thank you so much. I'll be moving to the headquarters starting tomorrow. I really owe it all to you for getting this far.
Oh, come on. It's your own hard work that did it. No need to be modest. You've earned it, so go to the headquarters with your head held high.
Yes, and, actually.
Norbert handed me an envelope. I immediately understood what it was.
I'm getting married soon. I really want you to come to the wedding, Miss President.
Of course. I'm looking forward to the delicious food.
We'll prepare something fabulous for you.
On the day of the wedding, I headed to the wedding putting on a beautiful dress, something I hadn't done in a long time. Norbert is getting married. I can't wait to see who he's marrying. Excited, I arrived at the venue. Being the president's son, the venue was large, beautifully and lavishly decorated. There were people of all ages, from young to old. There were also guests from the company, and I exchanged greetings with them.
Miss President, thank you for coming.
Norbert, what a beautiful wedding venue. Congratulations again on your marriage.
Thank you. Both my parents are thrilled. We went a bit extravagant. Please enjoy the food. It's delicious.
Thank you. Then Norbert's name was called from afar.
Oh, excuse me for a moment.
The star of the show is busy, I see. Don't worry about me. Go ahead.
Yes, Miss President. I'll see you later.
In marriage, huh? Maybe it's time I found someone too. As I leisurely thought this, searching for my seat, a shrill scream from a woman echoed through the venue.
What? Why are you here?
I turned around to find my ex-classmate, Susan. She wearing a pure white wedding dress. Norbert's partner for marriage turned out to be my ex-classmate, Susan. It was the same Susan as the one who had scorned me as poorly educated. My grip tightened in shock.
You, the poor girl from back then? What? Are you jealous and just came to see? I don't remember sending you an invitation.
I'm here as my work is related to Norbert's company.
What? You work with Norbert? That's the worst.
Susan scrutinized me from head to toe and laughed mockingly.
You still have that poor look on your face. It's such a turn-off. To think a poor person like you would be at my grand wedding.
As I felt uncomfortable, Norbert returned.
Susan, you two know each other.
He was surprised to see Susan and me talking. Susan slapped my back and laughed.
Not that well, just a college classmate. This person is crazy. She's just a high school grad, you know. She dropped out of college. A lowly educated high school grad from a single-parent family and super poor. It's so unbelievable these days. Really hilarious.
Susan clung to Norbert's arm.
Hey, why did you invite someone like her to our wedding? Norbert is a Harvard graduate, an elite. It's not a wedding for some poor high school grad. That's just a mismatch. Hey, Norbert, kick her out. Go on, shoo. Don't ever come near Norbert again.
Susan gestured as if shooing away a fly.
Ridiculous.
Norbert, with a flushed face, shouted loudly.
Norbert.
She's poor. She's a company president. And the person who helped me recover. What are you saying?
Huh?
Susan's eyes widen in shock.
A company president. No way.
I pulled out a business card from my bag. Susan snatched the business card from me as if grabbing it away.
This company. Norbert's.
You've gone too far, no matter what.
It's weird, isn't it? For Norbert, a Harvard grad, to work with a college dropout.
Huh? So you judge people by their education. You chose me for my education too, didn't you?
Wait. That's not it.
Then why did you decide to marry me? What did you like about me?
Norbert confronted Susan. Susan, twirling her finger and looking up at Norbert.
Because I thought being with a Harvard grad would secure my future. And you're the son of the president, and of course, you're handsome and hardworking. Being from Harvard and the president's son, that's part of your charm, right?
Norbert trembled with anger as Susan forcibly held his hand.
I mean, I fell for everything. Didn't I say I really love you?
No way.
Norbert shook off her hand.
Sorry, but I can't be with you, Susan. It's impossible for me to be with you.
Susan gasped in disbelief. It seemed Norbert was deeply hurt by being judged for his background and education. He then sincerely called for everyone's attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm terribly sorry for gathering you here. We will cancel the wedding and instead have a meal together.
Norbert. What are you saying? Norbert.
The meals will be brought to each table, so please enjoy the meal there. Don't forget to take your wedding gift back when you leave.
Hey. Why? Wait. Norbert.
He then faced Susan with a serious face.
Let's have a private talk with your parents and mine. I can't spend my life with you.
No. Wait. Why?
As Susan clung to him, Norbert tried to lead her away to talk privately. Before leaving, he looked at me and expressed his apology.
I'm really sorry for the rude words. I'll apologize properly later.
No, it's okay. You should have your talk with her first. Don't worry about me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Norbert's somber expression was something I had never seen before. I sighed and returned to my seat, but I couldn't swallow the exquisite food before me. A few days later, Norbert formally apologized. And then he told me about what happened afterward. Norbert and Susan officially ended their engagement. Susan was disowned by her parents due to the incident. She tried to visit Norbert's house multiple times, but he refused to see her. And it turned out that the fault lay not only with Susan, but also with her parents. It was revealed during discussions between both families that Susan had been repeatedly told by her parents to choose a man based on education and family background. They disowned her because she was no longer engaged to Norbert, who had a prestigious education. Such a thing.
Yes, it seems her parents often told her that. I did feel some sympathy for her.
So that was the situation. After hearing that from Norbert, I felt troubled. As I watched him leave the president's office and head back to the headquarters, I pulled out a copy of a resume from my desk drawer. It had Susan's name on it. After the turmoil, she had applied to my company. At first, I thought Susan might have applied just to cause trouble, but after hearing Norbert's story, I became curious about her reasons listed on the resume. I just want to hear a little bit more. I decided to go ahead with Susan's interview. On the day of the interview, I met with her nervously. But Susan came into the interview room with a serious look in her eyes. She wore a neatly tailored suit. Her hair was well styled, and the playful gestures that were once characteristic of her were completely absent. Susan, let's begin the interview.
Please do.
The interview progressed with such seriousness that it was hard to imagine she had ever jested before. Susan's expression was stern, showing no sign of malice. She answered the interview questions thoroughly. This concludes the interview. I was about to end Susan's interview after the last question. But then, something made me curious, and I had to ask her. I want to ask you this not as a president, but as a former classmate. Susan made a gulp sound. I could tell that she was nervous. Why this company?
I want to challenge myself.
Challenge.
I've stopped relying on men. This company allows women to rise based on their abilities, right? I want to carve out my own path in life, not because my parents told me to, but because I want to stand on my own.
I noticed the determination in Susan's clenched fists resting on her knees.
I've looked down on many people, including you. But being disowned by my parents made me realize how flawed I was. I wasn't prepared to live on my own.
Susan.
It's only now that I've understood the struggle of being alone. But it's not like me to live submissively at this age. I'll work hard and not let myself be outdone by anyone.
Her seriousness made me more nervous than her. But after reviewing her resume and hearing her during the interview, I made my decision. In a week then, I'll send the details by email.
What?
I'm saying you're hired. It somehow reminded me of myself from a few years ago. I remembered the time when, struggling desperately, the president offered me a job. Knowing Susan's resolve, I decided to bring her into the company. And that decision proved right. Susan demonstrated more effort and dedication than I had expected. She showed more dedication than expected, respecting the single mothers and women with less education she once ridiculed, efficiently managing her work. With her high communication skills and intelligence, she remarkably improved the company's performance within a year. Susan worked so hard that it made me feel a bit envious. And that effort was apparent to the president who had hired me. Then one day, the phone rang. Hello, this is Karen.
Karen, are you free today or tomorrow?
Mr. President, good evening. Yes, I am free. Is it about a work meeting? I tensed up at the president's words over the phone. But the president surprised me with his response.
No. How about we go for a drink? The company you're managing has grown so much. Let me celebrate that a bit.
Yes, of course. I'd be delighted. That evening, I went out for drinks with the president. Having a drink alone with the president, who had been so supportive, was actually a first for me. I sat down, feeling both excited and nervous. The president, considerate as always, chose a relaxed setting for our gathering. As the alcohol loosened me up, I decided to ask him something. By the way, Mr. President. Why did you hire me? You came to the school for me, remember? Looking back, it seems so strange. I had been curious. The reason he specifically came to my school to recruit me, even after I had dropped out, had always nagged at me. I was completely unaware of his intentions at the time. When I looked at the president, he hesitated for a moment, remaining silent. But gradually, he began to open up.
The truth is,
Yes.
I am your real father.
Yes. Wait, what? My head, previously fuzzy from alcohol, suddenly cleared. "What, father?" The president, or rather my father, put down his glass of alcohol and began to explain slowly.
Things were not going well at work. I had decided to start my own company, but I couldn't make it work, and there was hardly any income. Yet, I worked desperately.
Because of this, he was rarely able to return home. Unbeknownst to me, my mother had met with my father a few times outside. However, he was too busy and could only spare a few minutes between work commitments, never managing to come home. By the time his business finally started to take off, I had already become a college student.
I offered to help with your tuition, but you were adamant about getting a job. Your mother said if I really wanted to help, I should employ you at my company.
Oh, that's what Mom meant by having something to fall back on. Then, as his company's performance improved, he started financially assisting my mother. My mother insisted she was fine, but considering I had a brother and sister, and the college expenses, he felt obligated to make amends for the past. So, he sent money every month to support her and our family.
What I did is unforgivable. I was always running away, leaving everything to your mother. When I heard she collapsed, the regret was immense.
So, the company I'm working for now is.
It seems my actions naturally led there. A company for single mothers. Perhaps it was my way of making amends to your mother and you all.
That evening, over drinks, I had a lengthy conversation with my father. Although shocked and hardly able to drink, I listened to various stories from the past.
I'm truly sorry.
The man I respected as the president, my father, was sincerely apologizing to me. But I quickly told him not to. Had it been my childhood self, I might have harbored anger towards my father. I might have asked him, "Why did you abandon us?" Or which was more important, work or family? But in the end, he helped our family. He is still protecting my mother's life. I never harbored any resentment towards my father. There were times I wished he had helped us sooner, but realizing that he employed me, cared for me, and watched over me closely made me feel that he had indeed been a father to me. From that day on, I had a father in my life. I gained a father who is also the president. I talked with my mother, and we decided to go on an outing with the whole family. I am incredibly excited about our first family trip. People should not be judged by their titles or labels. Even those with prestigious titles may lack effort or manners, and those who are less fortunate can be competent and successful. Rather than assuming based on appearances or titles, I felt reaffirmed in the importance of looking people in the eye and truly engaging with them.
Finally, the useless old man is leaving.
The manager, Susan, chuckles as she says this. She's planning to use her position as the CEO's daughter to kick me out of the workplace. My former colleagues also gave into her pressure and left before me. Unable to find the words to fight back, I just gave a glance and was about to leave when a certain person appeared, and upon seeing him, Susan and the other employees suddenly started to tremble. That person was? My name is Michael Reed, 48 years old. In St. Augustine, one of the historic resort areas in Florida, I manage a historic inn named Reed's Inn. Our inn has been in business for 80 years now, and thanks to our loyal customers over the years, we've continued as a historic hotel, cherished for its old world charm. Recently, due to the aging facilities, we decided to undergo a major renovation. The construction period is about 6 months. Honestly, For a small, family-run inn like Reed's Inn, closing for construction for half a year was far from feasible. However, this time, by joining under the umbrella of the Greater New York Hotel Group, a major player in the industry, we were able to get the entire construction cost funded. The Greater New York Hotel Group has been on a rapid growth trajectory over the past decade, achieving success by purchasing and renovating struggling traditional inns and hotels along with their staff before reopening them. Their mission is rooted in preserving the essence of classic American inns and hotels. It's quite an honor that our own Reed's Inn is considered worthy of such preservation. Though we weren't exactly struggling financially, I had been dragging my feet on undertaking major renovations, so the offer from the Greater New York Hotel Group was incredibly welcome. It looks like we'll be able to give our employees a bit of a pay bump and upgrade our systems and equipment, which should make their work a lot smoother. Above all, the transition to a new environment should also be seen as an opportunity for them to start fresh. Many of our regular customers are elderly, and they were delighted with the renovations that made our facilities more accessible. Then, 6 months later, Reed's Inn was reborn as Greater Ocean Resort, transforming into a new style of inn with amenities that were previously unavailable, such as a beauty treatment room and spa. With the expansion of the facilities, the number of staff more than doubled, and the employees who had worked at Reed's Inn learned a new manual from scratch and hustled to prepare for the reopening. Thanks to their efforts, the response was better than expected, receiving high praise from both regular and new customers. However, there were also colleagues who chose to leave. Officially, I'm the manager of Reed's Inn, a position held in name by the Reed's family. But in reality, I'm an employee under the Greater New York Hotel Group. There's a person dispatched from the headquarters with the title of Operations Manager, and I have to consult with her about everything I do. And this Operations Manager, Susan, is the 23-year-old daughter of the CEO of the Greater New York Hotel Group. She graduated from a famous university last year and, of course, has no experience in hotel management. But being a relative of the CEO, she's a particularly delicate person to deal with. We have to follow her direction and report everything that happens in the operation to her. If there's something she's not informed about, she immediately becomes moody and gathers the employees to scold them. Especially, she's harsh on the employees who have been with Reed's Inn since before the renovation. The first to clash with Susan was my mother, the landlady. The landlady tried to teach the new employees the ways of the hotel staff. But Susan started saying that the very existence of hotel staff was outdated.
Maid uniform is a just old-fashioned restraint. It takes up too much time and is hard to move in. From now on, everyone will wear these shirts and skirts I've chosen,
she said, handing out new uniforms to all the hotel staff. This led to most of the hotel staff quitting, because the special allowance they received for wearing a maid uniform was gone. Moreover, wearing a maid uniform was a matter of pride for historical hotel staff, as important as a lawyer's badge. Yet, the landlady continued to wear her maid uniform daily until one day, she broke down and announced she was quitting. After all, nearing 80, she was feeling the limits of her physical strength. Since her husband passed away, her days of seclusion had increased. I couldn't stop my mom from leaving the inn. After getting rid of the bothersome landlady, Susan became even stricter with us.
If you don't like what I say, you're free to leave.
Naturally, being talked down to like that would upset anyone.
I'll listen to what you say, the manager Michael, but I don't want to follow that woman's orders.
I was told this by former colleagues numerous times. In response, I tried to talk to Susan, asking if she could be a bit more considerate of the team's feelings, but she wouldn't listen at all. In the end, her oppressive attitude didn't improve, and employees left one after another. Within a few months, almost none of the original team was left, and effectively, Susan took control of the place. However, Tom, who had been working with me since I took over Reed's Inn from the previous generation, stayed despite disliking Susan, trusting me.
I'll stick with you, Michael, until you decide to leave this place.
He's only 28 years old, a young talent, but has been working in the hotel industry since his teens. Since coming to Reed's Inn, he had been supporting me as my right-hand man in every way. However, Susan saw him as a rebel and cut him off from special tasks. I had entrusted Tom with all the beverage procurement and inventory management, but now he can't even enter the beverage warehouse without permission. I felt terrible for Tom. He's a talented young man. He could leave and work at another inn? With these thoughts, I, a powerless manager, continued to offer our guests heartfelt hospitality. But even that didn't get through to Susan.
All our guests at Reed's Inn seem to be just old folks. We need to attract younger customers if we want to survive in this industry,
She said without any experience in management. While it's understandable for an inn to be somewhat mindful of its clientele for business reasons, I believe selecting guests goes against the spirit of hospitality. Shouldn't our role be to make every effort to please both past and future guests? And then, my worst fears were realized. It happened while I was away at a local resort and spa association meeting. A longtime customer of our inn, Mr. Johnson, had called to make a reservation, only for Susan, our manager, to unilaterally cancel it. For the record, that date had been reserved for Mr. Johnson well in advance. Every year, he books the same date to celebrate his wife's birthday, but this year it had been on hold due to renovation work. Having successfully reopened, Mr. Johnson called, hoping to visit. Susan canceled without consulting me. But the real issue isn't about the lack of consultation. It's about making Mr. Johnson feel unwelcome. Susan reportedly refused stubbornly, claiming another guest had already booked. I couldn't stay silent. That date was tentatively held for Mr. Johnson. I had informed you about this, and it was even noted on the schedule. Why did you accept another reservation without any discussion? She scoffed.
a tentative hold. I don't care about some verbal promise to a regular or whatever. The guests I booked are younger and more profitable. They'll order much more alcohol than an old couple.
I confronted Susan, unable to tolerate her arrogance. Who do you think you are, deciding who's worthy to be our guest? Some kid who doesn't even know the ABCs of service, acting all high and mighty. By the time Tom tried to intervene, it was too late. The frightened looks from the staff were all directed at me. Startled, I looked ahead to find Susan had apparently collapsed from my outburst, sitting on the ground with a terrified expression, shaking with fear. Eventually, with witnesses' testimonies, this incident reached the ears of the CEO, and I was relieved of my managerial duties. Hearing about my decision to leave the workplace early, Tom decided to resign voluntarily on the same day.
I believe you were right, Michael. That woman will surely face karma someday.
All I could do was give a bitter smile at Tom's words. Regardless of what Susan was like, the fact that I couldn't stay on the job was due to my own shortcomings. There might have been a better way to handle things, but I lacked the skill and patience to do so. That's all there was to it. I grew up watching my father's back, the sole heir to the Reed's Inn. Surrounded by new-style inns and hotels, the Reed's Inn stood as a bastion of tradition. Our guests chose us because of the trust and favor they had in the word heritage and my father, Bob, and they cared for me as well. Growing up, there was no doubt in my mind that I would take over the family inn, but that doesn't mean I've always been straight-laced and serious. Despite how I may appear, I got into some mischief as a student and caused trouble for those around me. Being the only son of a traditional inn felt suffocating at times. But that was just youthful folly. As I matured, my rebellious feelings faded, and I started to take life more seriously. All thanks to the kindness of those around me. I was surrounded by earnest adults. My dad, this staff at the inn, and even the guests, who were incredible people working hard to build their companies or serving their country. I felt I couldn't let myself be outdone, and worked hard at the inn. Then, 8 years ago, when my father suffered a stroke and fell ill, I took over the management. Initially, I pushed myself thinking it was only until my father recovered. But unfortunately, he never did. The suddenness of it all was a shock, but there was no time for sorrow. Alongside my mother, the landlady, I managed to keep the inn running, even though I was clueless at first. However, with the support of my mother and the staff, I gained confidence and worked even harder to provide better hospitality. Becoming the manager of the inn, I had a resolution in my heart. Not just to reform our inn, but the entire resort area. The number of visitors to the resort areas was declining year by year. No matter how much our inn strived, without the revitalization of the town itself, there was no future. To achieve this, I believed it was necessary to build more trust among the staff of the surrounding inns and hotels. So, I organized meetings where staff from both long-established and newly entered lodgings could interact, and I created tools for exchanging information. I discarded the notion of business rivals, thinking that if the entire resort area united as a new community, it would rejuvenate the whole area. For example, in times of trouble, such as when a facility experienced a problem, we could immediately refer guests to another lodging. The same went for when extra hands were needed. Job openings at Reed's Inn were shared with other inns that were short-staffed, and vice versa. We transformed the entire resort area into a place that welcomed both guests and workers alike. Thanks to these efforts, the resort town itself became more vibrant, leading to an increase in younger guests and families that had been rare before. This reform of the resort town attracted media attention, and we frequently received interview requests. Eventually, a documentary film was produced, which helped attract a younger generation interested in working in the resort town. Behind the resortification of the long-established Reed's Inn, there were concerns about falling under the umbrella of the Greater New York Hotel Group. It likely stemmed from the fear within about being overtaken and transformed into something completely different. However, I trusted the CEO of the Greater New York Hotel Group. That's because he was an old friend of my dad's and held my father, the manager of Reed's Inn, in high regard. The fact that he covered all construction costs and left me with the rights to manage the inn was due to our relationship. But it seems his daughter didn't get his intentions at all. No, in the end, it was my own lack of strength in conveying my thoughts. I feel terrible for the employees who supported the area of Reed's Inn with me, From what I hear, most of those who left earlier are now working at the resort and spa facilities within this area. Being former employees of Reed's Inn apparently made it easy for them to find new jobs. And frankly, I myself had been approached by well-known inns. Luckily, someone told me they needed my skills. Of course, my right-hand man, Tom, was planning to join me at the same inn. Despite how things turned out, I had no regrets in my heart. The traditional Reed's Inn might have disappeared on my watch, but I'm still here. All I need to do is make a fresh start with my trusted friends. And on the last day working at Greater Ocean Resort, I felt not frustration, but rather a sense of relief. Susan always treated us coldly, but I don't mind anymore. Well, I've been relieved of my duties as manager, so technically, she's the head of the inn now.
Today's your last day, huh? Good job. I heard you got hired at the Marina Inn. It's cheaper and more basic than here, right? Perfect for someone as incompetent as you guys.
With a smile, Susan taunted, and Tom retorted,
You're not fit to be a manager, not someone like you. But no matter how much it changes, this place will always be Reed's Inn to us and our guests. Don't you dare ruin it.
Humph, for someone who didn't even go to college, you sure talk big. And I heard you don't even have a family, abandoned by your parents and raised in an orphanage.
she said with a frown. Tom just grimaced at those words, probably reminded of his tough past. The truth is, Tom lost his parents early and grew up facing many hardships. I haven't heard the details, but I was told no adult around him offered a helping hand. That's why he came to this industry, where he could work and live on his own. Despite his frustration, Tom chose not to retort any further to Susan. I kept quiet, understanding his feelings. Then, Susan turned her scornful laughter and harsh words toward me.
Finally, the useless old man is gone.
I wanted to spend at least the last day laughing. But, feeling indebted to her, I responded to her arrogant behavior with silence. Then, from behind us, a voice said, "This is just terrible." Surprised, Tom and I turned around to find Mr. Johnson and his wife standing at the entrance. That's right. Today was the birthday of Mr. Johnson's wife. Normally, we would have welcomed them at Reed's Inn, but this time we had refused. "Mr. Johnson, what brings you here?" I blurted out without thinking. Then Susan looked at me and said, "Mr. Johnson, but I'm sure we declined his reservation." Glancing over, I saw the employee holding Mr. Johnson's luggage was shaking. But it wasn't just him. All the staff who see Mr. Johnson stood at attention, trembling. Mr. Johnson, unfazed, took off his shoes and strode into the inn. At that moment, even Susan turned pale and was speechless, frozen in place. Well, that might be understandable. After all, Mr. Johnson once served as the President of the United States. Anyone would recognize him, and it wouldn't be surprising to be overwhelmed by his formidable aura upon meeting him. Even I was intimidated when I first met him. But despite his appearance, he turned out to be a kind and compassionate man. Someone who has been a head of state obviously has a broad and deep perspective. However, today Mr. Johnson seemed a bit angry, looking around the building with a frown and saying,
"What a terrible state this is. There's no sense of history or charm left. And I haven't seen a single familiar face since I got here. I can't believe our region has come to this."
caught off guard by his sudden outburst. All the employees looked down.
No way, Mr. Johnson, you can't be serious.
Susan was just gasping for breath. Then, Mr. Johnson noticed me and Tom, his face breaking into a smile.
There you are. I heard through the grapevine you were fired, so I had to come see for myself. But here you are. And where's the landlady?
I responded solemnly to Mr. Johnson, who approached me with a look of joy. No, Mr. Johnson, the firing is true. She has retired. She was indeed of age. In fact, today is my last day as well. It's an honor to meet you one last time. Hearing this, Mr. Johnson sighed deeply.
This is Reed's Inn, a tradition that's been continued since the founder's time. To think that you and the traditions that your father and the landlady have upheld are being cast aside. I can hardly believe it.
I believe it's just the times deciding for us. Now it's called Greater Ocean Resort, and she's the new manager. She told us our way of thinking is outdated. I took this opportunity to turn the conversation to Susan. Mr. Johnson then turned his gaze to her. Susan was as still as if she'd turned to stone. Where had her usual vigor vanished?
You're the CEO's daughter, aren't you? Quite the eloquent speaker for someone so young. To challenge the tradition that has lasted 80 years. Could you explain to this old man what exactly you find so outdated about Reed's Inn?
Susan, sweating profusely across her forehead and all over her face, was moving her mouth as if speaking, but no sound was coming out, making it completely unclear what she was trying to say. In response, Mr. Johnson continued his speech.
Come to think of it, you were the one who took our reservation call the other day, weren't you? No matter what I said, you insisted that there were no available slots that day. Even if there had been some mistake, the right thing to do would have been to talk honestly and propose an alternative.
Cornered by Mr. Johnson, Susan became utterly disheartened. Unable to utter a sound, she could only whisper in a barely audible voice, "I'm terribly sorry," and collapsed on the spot. Just then, the office phone started ringing. After 2, 3, 4 rings, with everyone still in shock and no one moving to answer it, Tom ran to pick it up.
It's the CEO of the Greater New York calling for you.
Tom called out to me. Hearing this, Mr. Johnson said,
Maybe it's a call to bring you back. Reed's Inn must absolutely need you, right? That should be obvious to anyone.
Saying this, Mr. Johnson looked at me and smiled. According to the CEO, Mr. Johnson, who had heard rumors that I was about to be fired, had contacted the headquarters of the Greater New York Hotel Group. Susan had not told the CEO about arbitrarily canceling Mr. Johnson's reservation, and had only reported that she was threatened when she tried to discuss it. So this was the first time he learned the truth.
It seems I was under a misunderstanding. Moreover, I had not given Susan any managerial authority. She was supposed to be learning as a beginner. I never imagined she would act so tyrannically. I am truly sorry.
The CEO apologized to me. No, I should have also properly conveyed our beliefs to Susan. She just graduated from college and must have known nothing. She wasn't the one we should have been fighting against. I reflect on everything up to now. Susan wasn't the type of person who lacked motivation. She had her own ideals. But I never discussed those ideals with her. If I had clearly expressed my opinion, she might not have unilaterally canceled Mr. Johnson's reservation. While I was on the phone with the CEO, Mr. Johnson approached.
Could you transfer that call to me?
I said, sure, and handed the phone to him.
You were about to do something outrageous. It's not just me who trusts Michael's character. If he leaves this in, all our regular customers will likely stop coming.
As I listened to Mr. Johnson's words beside me, I felt a warmth in my heart. Tom came over to me with a happy expression on his face and said,
Aligning with the former nation's top, that's our Michael for you. I'll follow you wherever you go.
We exchanged glances and laughed. In the end, despite being persuaded by the CEO, we decided to stay at Greater Ocean Resort. Most of the decision-making regarding the inn was entrusted to me as the manager, and Tom was to continue working as my right-hand man as before. However, the employees of Reed's Inn, including the landlady who had quit before, would not return. Although some said they would come back if Susan left, I wanted her to stay too. No, I thought Susan should be here. As the CEO's only daughter, she must eventually become a crucial figure within the Greater New York Hotel Group. For those of us under their umbrella, Susan's growth is absolutely desirable. Therefore, I want to work with her, pooling our strengths. Since then, she seemed to have changed her mind a bit, welcoming guests and serving coffee herself, starting to entertain. Her demeanor and attitude changed rapidly, and she no longer showed any attitude of looking down on people as she did at first. Behind the scenes, she often argues and has petty squabbles with Tom, but I turn a blind eye to it, pretending that they are good friends to the point of fighting. 3 years later, my mother passed away. Many customers who had been kind to my mother, the landlady of Reed's Inn, gathered at the funeral, which filled me with genuine gratitude. And it was the catalyst for me to completely let go of Reed's Inn. From now on, I want to work wholeheartedly to elevate our new style inn, Greater Ocean Resort. So, I'm going to push this entire resort Inspiria, where we've lived through it all, to become the world's #1 hospitality town, both now and in the future. I don't want any friends at the bottom. Get the hell out of here.
At a class reunion after 15 years, as soon as I saw the face of a classmate from high school, he ridiculed me with a sneer.
You managed to come to the class reunion with your education only up to high school. Are you here to make a fool of yourself?
With those words, the classmate tried to provoke laughter from the others at the table. I was surprised to hear such words that I had never even thought of, but I had something I wanted to convey regardless. However, every time I tried to speak, he would interrupt me and talk over me.
All the members at this table graduated from top universities. We have nothing in common to talk about with you. There's no benefit for us. So just go away?
The classmate made a dismissive gesture with his right hand while wearing a disgusted expression. I see. Well, forget it then. See you tomorrow.
Tomorrow? What? What are you talking about? I don't want to see your face for the rest of my life. We have no use for you. Shut up and get out of here.
In the end, he didn't listen to anything I had to say. If he had understood the meaning behind my "see you tomorrow," his elite life wouldn't have been ruined. I am Nate Parker. I work as a company employee. Work is never easy, but I am grateful that I can work normally now. As an adult, I have found medication that suits my constitution, and I have improved my health. However, When I was a child, I was not very healthy and used to visit the hospital frequently. Looking back year after year, I realized that I've had far more days of poor health than days of good health. It was common for me to leave work early or arrive late, but when I entered junior high school, I began missing school frequently due to poor health. The worst period was right before I entered high school. I had a brief hospitalization in the fall of my first year of high school, and I simply couldn't focus on study. Attending high school with my health at the time was very challenging. Despite the frequent bouts of illness, I still enjoyed school life. Spending break time with friends, quietly sitting through classes while listening to the sound of the blackboard and the teacher's voice, eagerly anticipating the daily desserts served during lunchtime. School was filled with fond memories for me. I was reminded of those feelings when I received a postcard. In the year I turned 30, I received an invitation to a high school reunion. It seems that the reunion coincides with the school's 100th anniversary. Perhaps because of this milestone, it will be a joint reunion for all students. It will be the first time the reunion is held in a large hotel venue, and I'm looking forward to seeing my classmates again after such a long time. So, I've decided to attend. On the day of the reunion, faces from the past filled the venue, and everyone was excitedly chatting with each other. Despite being adults now, as soon as we saw each other, it felt like we were transported back to our high school days. Back in high school, I was often absent, but I was pleasantly surprised that many people remembered me. Perhaps because of my weak constitution, my appearance left a strong impression, and when people noticed the change in me, they exclaimed, "You used to be so skinny, but now you look so solid." The whole class greeted me with such comments. By the way, the high school I attended was well known in the area as a prestigious school, with many students going on to attend high-level universities. Because of this reputation, it was said to have a high rate of students advancing to university. At the reunion, more than half of the attendees were attending prestigious universities, and there were also quite a few graduates from top-tier universities. Dreams were pursued through attending vocational schools, or some chose to enter the workforce after high school, but I believe those cases were only a small part of the whole. Conversations naturally revolved around which university they attended. Each person had their own path and goals, and it was fascinating to hear about the experiences they had pursued or the fields they were currently working in. The venue of the reunion was set up buffet style, allowing people to freely move between tables. Actually, besides looking forward to meeting everyone, there was someone else I wanted to talk to if I could find them. As I made my way around the room, slightly nervous, I spotted Kent at a table towards the back. "Kent, long time no see." I called out, and he immediately met my gaze, but upon seeing my face, he let out a wry smile.
Oh, it's you, Nate.
His expression turning sour as if the air suddenly grew heavy. Sensing the difference in his reaction compared to other classmates, I tilted my head slightly in confusion. As I pondered how to continue the conversation, Kent spoke up.
You managed to come to the reunion. You're a high school graduate, aren't you? Did you come here to embarrass yourself?
Kent said with a smirk, trying to provoke laughter from the others.
Don't you notice something looking at this group? Oh, I see. You were always sickly and stayed at home. So you didn't have any contact with anyone other than us? Right. Everyone in this group attended top-tier universities. There's no common ground between you and us. So why don't you go somewhere else? There's no benefit for us in being embarrassed by your presence.
Well, don't say that. I want us to be friends from now on, not just as classmates. I tried to interject, surprised by his words implying embarrassment, but I decided to proceed with what I wanted to convey without dwelling on it too much.
Her friends. What are you talking about?
Kent cut me off as I spoke.
Why would you and I be friends? Besides, I don't need friends from the bottom of the barrel. Just leave already and stop causing trouble.
Kent said with a disdainful expression, gesturing with his right hand to shoo me away. Friends from the bottom of the barrel was such a harsh phrase. I couldn't help but wonder why Kent had become such a mean person, but there was no point in getting upset. Although there were things I wanted to convey, it seemed like he wouldn't listen, and I didn't want to further sour the mood, so I decided to stop for today. Well, forget it then. See you tomorrow. I started to say, but Kent interrupted me again.
Tomorrow? What are you talking about? Don't ever show your face again. We have no use for you. Shut up and leave already.
Kent said irritably, shooing me away with his right hand once more. I felt a little upset, but meeting other classmates again was enjoyable, and I had a new job starting tomorrow, so I decided to forget about the unpleasantness and focus on preparing for the next day. I've been transferred here as of today. My name is Nate. Nice to meet you all. The next day, the morning meeting of the company, I greeted all the employees cheerfully. From a slightly distant seat diagonally ahead, I felt an intense gaze directed at me, more than from anyone else. With eyes widened in surprise, Kent was staring at me. As the morning meeting concluded, Kent quickly approached me, faster than anyone else.
Why are you here?
Kent's slightly tense voice made nearby employees turn to see what was happening. I was planning to talk yesterday, but instead of listening, you told me to leave.
No, isn't it an important matter? What's going on? You're a supervisor now. That can't be true, can it?
Kent seemed surprised by the unexpected reunion in this setting. Seeing Kent's reaction, I couldn't help but chuckle. However, the section chief, who overheard our conversation, quickly intervened, looking flustered.
Kent, what's with your attitude towards the supervisor? That's too disrespectful.
Kent, now flustered, tried to explain to the section chief in a more friendly tone, "No, it's not like that." But his words came out hurriedly, showing his agitation. Kent explained to the section chief that we were classmates in high school. However, Kent's agitation stemmed from another reason. He was questioning the section chief about why you didn't even graduate from high school, was working in this company, and why I was a supervisor.
What? You're classmates and you don't know anything. Nate is a university graduate and a powerful man who has worked hard to get this far. That's why he was transferred to our branch office.
What? You went to university, but you hardly ever came to school. What's going on?
Kent was confused, but considering our past, It might not be surprising that even the fact that I attended high school would astonish him. After entering into high school, I spent some time recuperating, since there were occasions when I ran into classmates at the store. I had talked about being hospitalized or resting at home, so I think it was somewhat known to everyone that I wasn't attending high school. However, I hadn't given up on going to high school. I was just waiting for my health to improve. While consulting with doctors and continuing treatment, I transferred to a correspondence high school, which allowed me to study at home on many days. Although I started much later than everyone else, I worked hard on self-study. After graduating from high school, I was able to enter university, putting me a few years behind my classmates. As I gradually saw improvement in my health, my motivation surged. I dedicated myself to studying and pursuing my interests during my 4 years at university. Then, I joined this company's branch office in my hometown after graduation. Since I was a new employee, I have been looked upon in every way and have received compliments on my abilities. However, being older than the other new employees around me, I felt the need to be even more diligent, so I have been steadily working hard. Unexpectedly, I was approached with a promotion offer. I was told that I would first serve as a deputy manager, helping to lead the team alongside the manager, and depending on the results, there might be other responsibilities offered to me. Last year, when that manager was transferred to another branch, I was promoted to manager. It's a plausible story in terms of age, but in terms of years of service, it's an unusually rapid promotion to manager. Coincidentally, there have been many personnel changes over the past 2 years, partly due to retirements among managerial staff. Although it's only been about a year since becoming manager, apparently, there have been some achievements in the role, leading to my transfer from the local branch to the urban branch here. Before the move, I'll be taking a few days off, partly for the relocation process. During this time, I came to this branch office to introduce myself. While talking with the department head, I noticed Kent and learned that we'd be working in the same department. And by chance, the day before my transfer was the day of the alumni reunion. Since I couldn't talk to Kent when I came to introduce myself, I was hoping to have a chance to speak with him at the reunion. However, I later heard another reason for Kent's agitation. Kent, who graduated from a top university. Actually, Kent is also seen as a promising talent here at this branch. And apparently, there were rumors circulating that Kent would become manager at some point. If he continued to excel, it was said that even working at the headquarters was not out of the question. Amidst all this, there was an announcement of personnel changes, and I was appointed as manager. Kent, who was rumored to be the next manager, must have found it hard to believe.
The manager is personable and highly capable. Kent, you can do it.
The section chief encouraged Kent by patting his shoulder at that time, but Kent had a gloomy expression, probably because of that background. However, if I may say so, I think Kent's work performance is quite impressive. When you look at the data such as departmental performance and individual achievements, you can feel that his abilities are indeed as praised. Honestly, I didn't feel like I was declining in any way. Surely, I thought there would be many aspects where we could support each other as we work together in the future. It's been a week since I transferred. As I began to understand the daily work routine and started to feel a bit more relaxed, I was called to the conference room by the department head and section chief, and there, something happened that made me involuntarily exclaim, "Huh." Turns out, Kent received a transfer order, and what was written there wasn't a promotion like manager or anything similar, but rather, it was for the General Affairs Department of a small rural branch located in a distant prefecture from our current branch. After I was called, Kent was also summoned to the conference room. In front of me, Kent received that transfer order.
If you have a desire to contribute to this company, then go to the new branch with a new mindset and come back no matter what.
Kent hung his head low as the department head gave him a severe scolding. But why did this happen? It all stemmed from the events at that alumni reunion. During the reunion, Kent said some pretty harsh things to me, and it turns out that the whole ordeal was witnessed by people related to the company. As it happens, the event company managing the alumni reunion was actually one of our company's business partners, and some of their employees were working as staff at the venue. Apparently, Kent had no direct interaction with them, and he wasn't even aware that staff from our business partner were present. However, among those staff members, there were some who knew Kent, and because Kent stood out, he was in their line of sight. Upon seeing Kent enjoying himself, it seems they made an extra effort to provide sincere service. However, at that moment, someone witnessed Kent's behavior towards me. Although they didn't have direct dealings with Kent at work, this someone had observed Kent's behavior in the workplace and was surprised to see a side of Kent that was completely opposite to his usual demeanor. Moreover, this influential person was aware of who I was. Questions like, is it appropriate to have someone who speaks like that to others? And is that attitude acceptable towards one's superior, especially a manager, arose, and the upper management was notified. The contact person who was present during the incident and observed my interaction with Kent was the liaison from our client, also the department head. Given that they were a major client, it's not surprising that they raised concerns. With the company having high expectations for Kent, it was quite shocking. Following discussions among the higher-ups, it seems a precedent needed to be set.
Why me? Why is this happening to me? It must be a mistake. I was told I'd be promoted to manager next. Why? Why do I keep getting demoted? And to the General Affairs Department, no less. I won't be able to climb back up from there.
I graduated from a top university. Wasn't I considered an elite? I'm someone extraordinary, Kent shouted in frustration. While stuffing his belongings roughly into a bag at his locker, Kent's face contorted with bitterness. His actions and the sight of him clearing his desk were so pitiful that no one dared to approach him. Kent didn't make eye contact with me or anyone else in the end. He simply slumped his shoulders and left for his new assignment. If you could attribute it to anything, it was his own actions catching up with him. Still, I can't help but feel a bit disappointed. I couldn't help but wonder how he was doing, so I asked around. At the small rural branch, they seemed to be operating with just enough staff, and especially in the General Affairs Department, there's apparently a lot to handle. Kent would be dealing with tasks like warehouse organization and cleaning, often dismissed as menial chores. He seems to be constantly busy, moving from checking equipment to handling complaints. In Kent's mind, it seems like an unsatisfactory job, and he's complaining, saying, "Isn't this the kind of work that bottom-tier people do?" When he first transferred, he had some pride, and his frustration with being forced to do the work was apparent. However, I've heard that he's been gritting his teeth and suppressing his emotions. It may take some time for him to reflect and acknowledge that the significant demotion was his own fault, according to what the boss said. Hearing about Kent's recent situation made me feel a little sad. The Kent I remember from high school was thoughtful of his friends and always took the lead in everything. He had a quick mind, and even though we only worked together for a week, I thought he's truly impressive. So, even if the environment changed, and even if the nature of the work deteriorated, I imagined him persevering and still performing exceptionally. While I understand that people change internally as they grow up, it's still painful to see it happen, especially when I was looking forward to working together. At the same time, I remind myself, take a lesson from others' mistakes. Without realizing it, I might have changed for the worse or unintentionally made others uncomfortable. Being a manager means being in charge of others. I resolved to tighten up my own act. Compared to others, I've climbed up the ranks in a short time. I also have a sense of pride in the effort I've put in. But I won't forget that it's thanks to the people who support me and have high expectations of me that I've come this far.
A 15-minute lunch break is plenty. Quit dawdling and get back to work.
Working for an event company, I was assigned one day as the site manager for a major corporation's anniversary event. However, the president of the host company treated me and the workers as expendable subcontractors, belittling us. Working under the blazing sun with heat stroke warnings and extremely short breaks. That poor workplace environment led to a surge in health issues. Even when these concerns were raised to the president, he was dismissive.
You know there are plenty of subcontractors for events who work the same hours with even shorter breaks, right? If you can't handle it, I'll terminate the contract.
The president thought that threatening to terminate a contract would make us back down. I couldn't take it anymore, so I just said got it using the authority of the site manager. My name is Tom Green, a 35-year-old who works for an event company. Ever since I was a kid, I loved big events and festivities, and as an adult, I wanted to be involved in setting up and running them, which led me to my current job. After 13 years with the company since starting as a graduate, I have achieved some success and now often manage larger events. I'm blessed with a wife and kids, and I feel fulfilled both in my work and at home. Currently, I'm swamped with preparations for a major event scheduled for next week. It's a grand affair celebrating the 20th anniversary of a leading corporation, taking over a venue as large as a baseball stadium, quite elaborate for a regional event. After weeks of meticulous preparation, today was finally the day to enter the site, but...
All right, let's get to your positions quickly and knock them out,
said the president of the hosting corporation, without even looking at me and the workers when we went to greet him. Taken aback by his brusque greeting, both I and the workers were slightly bewildered. Until now, I had only dealt with friendly representatives, but I guess there are people like him too.
What are you spacing out for? Get started already.
Yes, alright, okay guys, let's start bringing in the equipment. Once everything's out, move it to the designated area. Feeling uneasy about the president's attitude, I began directing the workers. While setting up, I pondered about the president, Jeff Beck, hosting this event. The documents I received beforehand included information about him. Apparently, he's the second-generation president who recently took over the company from his predecessor. I wonder if the previous president who hosted the 10th anniversary event was also like this. During lunch break, in the conference room set up as a rest area for the workers, I casually inquired with the experienced workers, and they all shook their heads. It wasn't like this under the former president. We could work much more comfortably from start to finish, they all said unanimously. The outlook seems bleak on the very first day. Just as I was about to eat my lunch, thinking this,
how long are you going to take a break?
Suddenly, Jeff burst into the room and began berating me and the workers in a harsh tone.
A 15-minute lunch break is plenty. Don't dawdle, get back to work.
One of the experienced workers, unable to bear the president's overbearing attitude, stood up. We are entitled to an hour's break. It's clearly stated in the contract. If you require overtime work, that will incur additional charges. I quickly intervened in the conversation. It would be bad to have a dispute between the zealous worker and Jeff.
There are plenty of event subcontractors willing to work the same hours with shorter breaks, you know. I contracted with your company because I heard you had the former president's endorsement. But man, your service sucks.
As soon as the conversation turned to me, he started having a mocking tone. I doubt there are competitors who would happily accept overtime work without concern, but that's beside the point. Today is another scorching hot day with heat alerts. Workers won't last without proper breaks, and it will cause delays in work. Please understand this. It's early August now. We've been experiencing unusually severe heat for the past few days. It's not just about the contract, but more importantly, considering the workers' health is vital to get through the setup and tear down in this intense heat.
Geez, can't you be more flexible? Taking an hour's break. You better pick up the pace in the afternoon. If I catch anyone slacking, I'll terminate the contract.
Reacting to the mention of potential work delays, Jeff left the conference room with those parting words. After he left, I breathed a sigh of relief. We managed to avoid a major conflict, but what a difficult customer, or rather, a troublesome president. No matter how important the client is, this situation is getting increasingly problematic. It was the second day of being on site, in the morning, while we were setting up near the entrance of the venue. Normally, only the event company staff and the president would be on site, but that day, there was an unfamiliar person inspecting the setup. He seemed mainly interested in watching the workers set up the equipment, but could he be related to Jeff?
Kevin. Well, what a surprise.
While I was pondering, Jeff suddenly appeared and dashed over to a guy called Kevin. And while I was watching the scene with a puzzled expression, one of the workers leaned over and whispered to me, "Seems like he's the president of one of Jeff's company's clients. Must be here for some kind of inspection or something, huh?" Indeed, Jeff, who had been quite harsh with us, seemed unusually subservient to Kevin. As I watched this scene, Suddenly both presidents looked our way. Realizing it was not good, they were already approaching us. If they complain about us slacking, it'll be troublesome.
Good work. Are you the site manager? Nice to meet you,
said Kevin, offering his business card with a gentle and polite manner. In contrast, Jeff glared at us from behind Kevin with a displeased look. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have my business card on me.
No worries. It's my fault for interrupting your work. Jeff, could you introduce him?
Prompted by Kevin, Jeff reluctantly introduced me.
Actually, our company is approaching its 30th anniversary next year. I thought about holding an event and came to observe the setup today for reference.
That's wonderful. I apologize for not greeting you properly.
Oh, no, it's me who just showed up and announced. You all work so quickly and meticulously. It's reassuring. If this event succeeds, please consider handling ours too.
With those pleasing words, Kevin left. Sorry for interrupting your work, he said, being polite until the end. The brief joy of his kind interaction was interrupted as Jeff spoke to me from behind once Kevin was out of sight.
Don't get too cocky just because Kevin took a liking to you. He can be scary when angered,
he said with a smirk, which was quite unsettling. Is that so? I replied noncommittally, trying to get back to work, but Jeff stopped me again.
I was the one who introduced you to Kevin, right?
Well, yes, that's true.
Thanks to me, your company might land a new big client, right?
That's not certain yet.
That company could turn out to be a bigger client than ours. I did you a favor by connecting you. Shouldn't you be offering some kind of service in return?
It seemed like he was hinting at wanting some kickback for the introduction, but we hadn't officially gotten any work from Kevin yet. While I was thinking about how to handle the situation, Jeff started making more demands.
Yay, you know what? Let's step up the lighting in that exhibit area and give it some extra service.
Huh? I blurted out reflexively. He was referring to the largest space right at the entrance of the venue. The equipment setup was already complete, and changing it now was impossible. We didn't bring any extra equipment, and certainly not high-end lighting to use for free. No, that's just not feasible, logically speaking. I had a lot to say, but I summed it up succinctly. I wished he was just joking, but sadly, it seemed he was not. He was clearly looking displeased.
Your service really sucks. You're not even working that fast. If you can't offer a better service, at least finish earlier than planned. Starting tomorrow, you're going full throttle with no breaks, got it?
As soon as he realized things weren't going his way, he quickly showed his displeasure and started making unreasonable demands. I wonder, is this president older than me? Is this how someone who runs a large corporation behaves? That thought made me angry, and my tone became a bit sharper. There are no delays in our work, and we will adhere to the break times as per the labor regulations. Besides, we haven't officially received any work from Kevin yet. Saying that, I returned to work without waiting for Jeff's response. However, he followed me, so I quickly moved to work at a higher spot. As Jeff reached out to the ladder I was on, an experienced worker nearby shouted, "Hey, that's dangerous. Don't touch it." Jeff, intimidated by the worker's outcry, left the area. But the next day, something unexpected happened. The conference room we had set aside for breaks was no longer available. Upon inquiry, I found out that the reservation for the conference room had been canceled as of yesterday. It was clear this was Jeff's way of causing trouble. Still, we had to continue working, so everyone left their belongings in their cars or in corners of the venue, taking turns to eat and rest whenever possible. However, it was impossible for all the workers, numbering in dozens, to have their meals and short breaks in the lobby, hallways, or, worse, under the scorching sun outside. Moreover, Jeff, who had stayed in his office during the first 2 days, suddenly started making frequent rounds of the setup. If he caught anyone taking a break, he'd immediately start giving them a hard time, saying stuff like "this ain't break time" or "quit slacking off." He targeted only the timid elderly, women, and youngsters. Why doesn't he just bring his complaints to me, the site manager? Unfortunately, outdoor work also began that day, meaning most of the work hours were spent under the direct sunlight. Under such terrible conditions, it was inevitable that people started falling ill. Though no one was emergency transported, it was a natural outcome of working almost non-stop under the blazing sun. Jeff's response to the sick workers was consistently insensitive, saying things like, "They're probably just faking it," or "people who can't contribute should just disappear," without any compassion or empathy. Fearing the situation could become irreversible, I, as the site manager, allowed those feeling unwell to take more breaks and instructed them to go home if they showed symptoms like fever. But Jeff retorted with a final blow.
Don't let them go home on your own. Isn't that a breach of contract? What if the event can't proceed as planned?
This comment ignited my anger, and I responded with a voice close to yelling. Is the event more important to you than human life? We are not machines. It's natural that humans need breaks. If you think it's so easy, why don't you try working out here in this heat? Perhaps the heat and anger made me lose control of my words. Jeff flinched momentarily at my outburst, but quickly directed his anger back at me.
What's with that attitude? Acting like some hotshot subcontractor with an attitude. The workers aren't doing their job properly because you, the site manager, aren't handling things right. If you can't work properly, I'll really terminate the contract.
Does he still think threatening to terminate a contract will silence me? How underestimating. With that thought, strangely, my anger dissipated. Understood. Given the circumstances, let's call it quits, folks. Pass the word along to the others. I found myself giving orders to the nearby workers with a wooden face. Jeff probably thought I had snapped. Assuming no one would listen to me, Jeff looked smug. Leave no trace behind. Clean up before you leave, he said with a smirk. That was the moment. The workers began dismantling all the setup equipment in unison. Led by the experienced leaders, both young individuals and women actively participated in the retreat operation. My decision alone might be shaky, but since we got the customer's assurance firsthand, the workers can pull out without any worries. The speed of it, I tell you, no matter how many years you've seen it, it's impressive. Unlike the setup, the dismantling process was relatively quick. The outdoor booths we had just set up were gone in no time. Even before Jeff could grasp what was happening. We'll clear out the indoors quickly too. Probably will be done in half a day. I told the dazed president, who snapped back to reality and blurted out, "You're really going to clear everything up?" It seemed he had just realized that getting another company now wouldn't meet the event deadline.
How are you going to explain this to your boss, huh? If you cancel the contract like this, you'll be fired. Are you okay with that?
Sure, that might happen. But at this point, I was fine with that. If I get fired for prioritizing human life, then so be it. While Jeff was making a fuss, the dismantling work progressed rapidly. But his ranting was barely noticeable amidst the work noise, so I continued to give instructions and work methodically. Before the end of the workday, all tasks from dismantling to moving out were completed. Was this the fastest we've ever done? After giving the staff the go-ahead to leave, I, as the site manager, approached Jeff for one last time. As per your instruction, all work has been completed. The contract is now concluded, and I will inform our boss. Thank you very much. Just after finishing the formalities and about to get into the car without waiting for a response, I saw someone rushing into the venue. Kevin. It was Kevin, who had visited the site the other day. Seeing the neatly cleared venue, he looked astonished.
Thought I'd drop by again today and see how things are going. What on earth happened here?
Kevin asked the pale-faced Jeff. In a near frenzy, Jeff blurted out, they started dismantling everything on their own. I calmly recounted Jeff's actions on site, the poor working conditions, the resulting health issues among workers, and how he insisted on continuing the work despite it all, mentioning that he himself had said contracts could be terminated as replacements were available. I prioritized human life and terminated the contract under my authority as site manager. Sorry for the inconvenience on your visit.
How can you prove I said that, huh? Show me the evidence.
Jeff, stomping in frustration, was bewildering, but when asked for evidence, we had none. As I hesitated, a worker spoke up. We have evidence. Despite being directed to leave, many workers had stayed, waiting. The first worker pulled out his phone, and before you knew it, the others followed suit, all playing their recordings simultaneously. The recordings captured Jeff's unreasonable demands, his tirades, and a recent conversation. Dozens of workers, unable to stand Jeff's tyranny, had recorded evidence just in case. We recorded it to make sure Tom wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Glad it helped, said the experienced worker.
I see. So that's what happened. That's regrettable. Tom, thank you for your hard work up to today. Let's talk again if there's a chance.
Kevin said with a smile, then quietly turned back to face Jeff.
Jeff, may we have a word?
His mouth smiled calmly, but his eyes were not laughing. You know, there might be some truth to the saying you don't want to get on his bad side. Oh, alright then, I'll just, oh, and Kevin, here's my card, couldn't give it to you yesterday. Anyway, it was nice meeting you. Hope we can catch up sometime. After handing my card to Kevin, I quickly got into the car. With Jeff flustered and Kevin unnervingly calm, I drove off, pondering how to explain to my wife that I might lose my job. From here on out, we're getting into what happened next. In the end, I didn't lose my job. I went to work with a letter of resignation, ready to apologize, but my boss said, who would want to continue a contract with a company that treats its employees' lives as disposable? We found better clients, so it's all good. I still had to write a report as a formality, though. Fortunately, the sick workers all recovered and returned to work a few days later. I cannot thank the workers enough who endured the harsh conditions and provided evidence against Jeff. I heard from one of the workers that after that incident, Kevin quickly decided to cut ties with Jeff's company and halted their business dealings. Jeff tried to find another contractor to restart the setup, but it was impossible to find one that could meet the schedule, and the planned event was inevitably canceled. I was bracing for blame, but instead, most companies sympathized with ours. The news would spread quickly through the industry. I wonder if Jeff's company will be okay. Well, right now, I don't have the bandwidth to worry about other people. Kevin has officially requested us for a huge event in a much larger venue than Jeff's company. Being assigned as the site manager again, I need to work even harder from now on.
A high school graduate like you, not suitable for my son. Cut ties and leave the venue immediately.
That's right. Robert is an elite. Someone like you shouldn't be involved.
I can't believe you're still just a high school graduate. Why did Robert invite a person like you to such an important event? Oh well, since you're here, just leave a gift. It probably won't be a significant amount anyway.
Well then, here's my gift, though, and speaking of cutting ties, I'll also close the account with a deposit of $15 billion that I have in that bank over there. My name is Michael Jones. This is a story that happened at my best friend Robert's wedding. I've hated studying since I was a kid, always avoiding it whenever possible. My parents were worried about me and tried various learning methods that might interest me, such as drills explained by anime characters, puzzle-like educational materials, and trendy cram schools where classes are fun, but I rejected everything. Since my parents were both working full-time, they didn't have time to directly supervise my studies, and they were troubled about what to do. Despite my aversion to studying, I made sure to help out around the house since my parents weren't home much. Since I was a kid, doing laundry and cleaning was something I enjoyed. Watching the room get cleaner was fun, and more than anything, when I helped out, my parents would pat my head and praise me, giving me a sense of usefulness. And I became addicted to the joy of being praised. When I became a high school student, I started cooking as well. Even when I was in elementary school, I had an interest in cooking, and I used to make simple chicken soup or bake bread. Thanks to my parents having a decent income, I bought recipe books I was interested in and gathered the necessary ingredients and seasonings to try making various dishes. With that, doing household chores became more and more enjoyable for me. Among them, my specialty dish was beef stew. At first, I used beef stew seasoning, but I started to experiment with seasonings, pay attention to the quality of the ingredients, and even got a pressure cooker as a birthday present to improve the quality, becoming particular about cooking utensils. When there were regular tests at school, even though I hated studying, I had to study to a certain extent because I couldn't afford to fail and repeat a year. So, my parents said they would make their own meal or buy some side dishes or lunchboxes from the supermarket during test times, but since I like cooking more than studying, I told them to leave all the cooking to me and came up with ideas like making pre-made menus on weekends and freezing them. Seeing my enthusiastic attitude, my parents seemed to realize, gave up on studying, and thought they would let me do the household chores I liked as much as I wanted. I hated studying and was bad at it, but I didn't particularly dislike school itself. Especially spending time with my best friend Robert was very fulfilling. Robert was the eldest son of an elite family who had served as the president of a bank for generations, and he was very diligent in his studies. We were completely opposite types. Even his parents always said, Robert will definitely go to a prestigious university and take over the family business. So, first, study. It's okay to choose a club activity that doesn't require much participation. Despite those expectations, he was always diligent, achieving first place in the class in regular tests. Although we were complete opposites, he was very kind and talked to me, who was struggling with homework at school while trying to secure time for cooking at home, and taught me how to solve problems. From then on, we spent more time together, and when we were eating lunch together, I noticed that he was eating lunch of a convenience store every day. When I asked about it, he said his family, all of whom worked as bankers, was busy, and they would give him $5 to buy lunch. However, he had a small appetite and didn't like the strong flavors of convenience store food, so he was having trouble. If that's the case, shall I make and bring lunch for you?
Is that okay? But it takes time.
Don't worry about it. I make lunch not only for myself, but also for my parents. It's just one more, so it's not much extra effort. It's my way of thanking you for always helping me with my studies, right? When I pressed him like that, he agreed and said he would give me $5 he received for lunch as ingredients expenses. I declined once, but Robert insisted, saying, at least this much, and I reluctantly agreed. I made lunch every day and enjoyed seeing him eat it and react to it. I understood his taste preferences, and the beef stew I made for him, who liked light flavors, was so delicious that he really liked it. Since dinner was mostly supermarket deli food due to everyone in the family coming home late, I sometimes visited his house to share my cooking. I happened to meet his mother once when she came home early by chance, and she said, "Oh, a friend of Robert's. Welcome. If you're Robert's friend, are you good at studying? Which university are you aiming for?" She bombarded me with questions, and when I honestly told her that I wasn't good at studying and hadn't thought about university at all, she muttered discontentedly, "Why this boy?" Seeing her like that, wow, this lady is scary. Just as I thought, Robert intervened and said, "I always talk about him. It's Michael Jones who makes lunch for me and sometimes brings dinner." Robert's mother smiled and said, "Well, thank you for coming all the way. Health is certainly important, so I'm grateful. Teaching him also contributes to Robert's growth, so let's keep in touch in the future." But her eyes didn't smile, and she looked scary. It seemed the fact I made lunch every day was conveyed, and I was appreciated for that, but I felt uncomfortable with her overwhelming presence, as if she was saying not to get involved with someone who is not good at study, and her eyes that seemed to be carefully evaluating me. The days of making lunch for Robert continued until graduation. And then, on the day of the graduation ceremony, Robert's mother came to me and Robert, who were saying goodbye. "Hello, you're Michael, right? Thank you for his lunch all this time. By the way, have you decided which university you're going to after all?" The mother, who seemed to look down on me a bit. When I told her that I had thought about it a lot but had given up on going to university, and that I was still immature but would try to live as a working adult, Robert's mother's expression changed completely. Her face turned into a demon-like expression, and I felt like I was about to get chewed out any minute now. When I was feeling scared, Robert grabbed my hand and pulled me away from the situation, saying, "Michael's future has nothing to do with Mom. Michael, they're taking class photos over there. Let's go join them." Robert was supposed to go to the best local college as planned, and initially, I intended to follow suit, pressured by my parents and teachers to pursue further education. I hadn't been a diligent student in the past. I failed to even get into a safety net university, and ended up hastily applying to a private university with a reputation for admitting almost everyone, with an entrance exam deviation score of around 30, just to get in. But due to the rush, I hadn't thoroughly researched the university, only to find out later that the tuition fees were higher compared to other schools, and there were additional expenses like donations. Not wanting to pay such a high amount of money just to study something I hated, I persuaded my parents. Although they could afford it if they pushed themselves, they recommended further education for my future. However, I had already decided not to go. Seeing my determination, my parents gave up, and so entered the workforce right after high school. For the next 15 years after graduating from high school, I worked tirelessly. Unlike studying, work becomes more rewarding the more you do it, as it helps others. I found it enjoyable. I was happy to hear customers say thank you, and to receive praise from my bosses. Even though there was overtime, I didn't find it burdensome at all. I was truly a workaholic. Even on my days off, I loved my job so much that if I heard there was an opening in the shift, I would immediately volunteer to fill in. Then one day, I received a wedding invitation from Robert. I was so thrilled, as if it were my own event, and I immediately replied my participation. And then, on the wedding day, the venue was magnificent. There were masses of bouquets, with white roses on each table. There were masses of bouquets, with white roses on each table. The wall decorations were elaborate, reminiscent of a medieval European ball. Robert had smoothly progressed to a prestigious university after his high school graduation. He was excellent in college as well, and rumors of his achievements even reached my ears while I was working. With his natural intelligence and dedication, Robert excelled as a banker, and his abilities were recognized to the extent that he succeeded his father as the president of a regional bank, while his father became the chairman. This luxurious venue must have been a testament to Robert's hard work. Come to think of it, since it's a wedding, Robert's parents must be coming too. Back in high school, I remember his mother trying to get him lunch from a convenience store, even on days when he was sick, and pushed studying onto him. I was probably left a bad impression on her as well. Not looking forward to this. As I was thinking about that, Robert's parents noticed me. As soon as I entered the venue, and approached me.
"Are you Michael, Robert's friend from high school?"
Asked in a slightly intimidating tone, I answered, yes, feeling perplexed. Then his mother continued, "We were surprised when we heard you didn't go to college after graduation, so, what have you been doing since then?" I replied, "As I mentioned before, I've been working since high school." And they both sighed loudly in unison.
A high school graduate like you is not suitable for Robert. He's an elite among elites. Someone like you, who hasn't even gone to college, is not fit to associate with him.
Yeah, Robert is at the top of the elite. It's unthinkable for someone like you, a mere high school graduate, to be involved in such an important event.
Exactly. I can't believe you're still just a high school graduate. Why did Robert even invite someone like you to this important occasion? Oh well, since you've come all this way, just leave your congratulatory gift and go. It's probably not a significant amount of money anyway.
Their incredibly rude remarks left me speechless. Nevertheless, they were Robert's parents. Despite not wanting to cause a scene, I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable, so I retorted somewhat provocatively, "You're right. If that's how you feel, then it seems cutting ties is the only option. Oh, and here's my congratulatory gift. Please accept it." "Oh right. If we're cutting ties, I'll also cancel the deposit at that bank over there, the $15 billion deposit." But to my surprise, instead of looking shocked, they burst into laughter, holding their stomachs, and said, "What, $15 billion? What a joke, you're quite amusing. It's hilarious that your screws are so loose." They mocked me, not taking me seriously at all. Just then, Robert arrived. I conveyed to Robert how his parents treated me, and that I felt sorry for causing trouble even though I had come to celebrate. I suggested leaving in this manner.
Robert, you gotta think about your friendships. You know, this guy just being a high school graduate is embarrassing enough. And now he's talking about canceling his $15 billion deposit. Not only is he a high school graduate at the bottom of the barrel, but also a big fat liar. It's actually hilarious. At this point, it's just pitiful and pathetic.
Robert, upon hearing this, turned pale in an instant. Ignoring his parents, he immediately turned to me and said, "Michael, I'm sorry for causing you distress despite you coming to celebrate. I want you to reconsider about the deposit. I know it's difficult, but I think it's necessary. I'll send Mom and Dad home, so please participate in this ceremony."
I promise you won't regret it.
Seeing him so desperate, I gave in and decided to participate for the time being. Of course, it couldn't be that his parents wouldn't attend his wedding, so I told him it was okay not to return them home. I tried to avoid looking towards Robert's family seat as much as possible during the ceremony. At first, I thought the celebration would be overshadowed by Robert's parents, but once the ceremony began, I found myself getting emotional seeing how splendid my best friend had become. From the consideration towards the invited guests to the small gestures, it became evident that the bride was a wonderful woman. I genuinely wished for their happiness. At the end of the ceremony, when Robert was reading a letter to his family, he began to speak about something astonishing.
Thank you all for gathering here today. I have something I want to convey to my parents.
Everyone in the audience thought they would hear a touching story.
First of all, I deeply apologize for my parents' obsession with academic and banking elitism, which has caused discomfort and inconvenience to many people over the years. Earlier, my parents insulted my dear friend Michael Jones, calling him a bottom-tier, lying high school graduate. Michael, I apologize again for my parents' extremely rude behavior. Also, this is an apology as a banker. I sincerely apologize for the extremely rude behavior of our staff towards Mr. Jones, our valued customer, who has entrusted us with a large amount of assets. We are fully aware of our audacity, but we hope to continue our business dealings with you in the future.
And with that, he bowed deeply. Robert bringing up such things at a joyous occasion. The whole venue was buzzing. Robert's momentum didn't stop. Furthermore, my parents have committed numerous acts of misconduct. Here is the evidence. On the projector screen that had just been showing the happy couple's love story, evidence of misconduct was displayed. It was nothing but fatal misconduct as bankers, such as receiving kickbacks from valued customers, approving large loans without investigation, and increasing interest rates. Although there was a commotion in the venue, it escalated into a major uproar from the business associates' seats. Robert's parents were pale. Robert, after confirming his parents once, said, "My parents will be removed from all positions at the bank as of today. Furthermore, we will thoroughly investigate internally to ensure that such incidents do not occur again and declare to rebuild the bank cleanly. Please continue to do business with us." He bowed deeply again. Robert's pale parents collapsed from their seats, unable to face reality or burying their faces. Although I felt that Robert hadn't done anything wrong, I was moved by his resolute rejection of his own parents and applauded. Following my applause, the other attendees clapped one after another, and Robert's wedding came to a close. In fact, after graduating from high school, I immediately pursued my passion for housework and joined a housekeeping service company, where I worked for about 10 years. The housework skills I honed over the years were surprisingly comparable to those of veterans in the field, and my colleagues accepted me as a professional without caring that I was only a high school graduate. Working in a housekeeping service meant not only doing housework, but also often interacting with customers. Especially during the summer vacation, there were times when parents went to work while their children were at home, so they would ask for housework and meals for the children. I would do the housework, play with the children when asked, and then report on the chores I had done and the children's condition when the mothers returned home. When they said, "I'm sorry to have you take care of the children even though you're a housekeeper, and thank you for reporting back to me," I felt embarrassed but very happy. I felt fulfilled by doing housework, communicating with customers, and being appreciated. I loved my job so much that on days off, I would do housework at home. Since I had no hobbies other than work and no girlfriend, my savings grew rapidly, and I retired from the company after 10 years. After that, I established a company that operates housekeeping services. The company I had been working for is, well, losing a talented guy like Michael, and on top of that, you're setting up your own company. Looks like we'll have some competition on our hands, but they sent me off warmly. Although I knew nothing about management or accounting, I studied diligently, learning bookkeeping, marketing, law, and other subjects, and honed my skills enough to manage the business without any problems. I was moved to find that I could now understand things I couldn't grasp as a child through my social experience. Since I already understood the know-how of housekeeping services from my previous company, I standardized the housework and devised a way for even novice employees to quickly perform their duties. However, I thought it would be the best to provide training sessions, so I also worked on trial and error for the content of the training. Moreover, I loved listening to people's stories, so even though I was the president, I listened carefully to each employee's story. Especially at the beginning, since there were only about 10 employees in the small company, it was like a family. As a result, the turnover rate at my company was extremely low, and we had a successful start in the industry. Furthermore, as I was the president, I no longer had the opportunity to visit customers as a housekeeping service provider, but I served my homemade dishes in the employee cafeteria. Although they were initially hesitant, once they tried my cooking, they were impressed with its deliciousness, and now they all use the cafeteria every day, saying that the president's cooking is the best. Eventually, word spread among affluent customers, and suddenly, there was an influx of wealthy clients. Moreover, we were referred by ultra-wealthy clients. And we entered into large contracts not only for housekeeping services for ordinary households, but also for nursing homes and care welfare centers. This was the beginning of rapid growth for my company. Not everything was surplus funds, but it was decided to deposit a whopping $15 billion in the company's name at the bank where Robert works. At that time, I asked Robert as a favor based on our old relationship, but a thorough investigation was conducted. In the end, everything was cleared, but looking back now, I felt that Robert really climbed to the top as a president at a young age because he was sincere and serious. It started as a business relationship from the establishment, and now we are completely super VIP customers. I was annoyed with Robert's parents, but Robert himself is not at fault, and more importantly, his desperate efforts to rebuild the bank make me want to support him, and as a result, the $15 billion deposit remains untouched. When we met at the bank, we were careful not to mix business with pleasure, and we spent time together as friends when we met elsewhere. Since that wedding, it seems that Robert's parents have been immediately stripped of all their positions at the bank.
Abandoning your own parents is too cruel.
It's all because of that high school graduate. All right, so at least let us work as bank employees. And they seemed to cling, but Robert rejected it outright. It seems they were completely kicked out of the bank. Such stories spread not only within the bank, but also in the neighborhood, and rumors were whispered every day. Feeling uncomfortable, they moved to another region. There's probably nowhere that will hire them. Still clinging to the position of bank employees, it seems Robert's parents went for an interview at a bank in another region, but the events Robert's parents caused were already widely known in banking circles. Well, it's none of my business. On the other hand, Robert and his wife, Mary, are working together to support the bank's work. Mary, in passing, seems to have worked as a receptionist at the bank, and she was captivated by her graceful demeanor. Robert made one-sided advances, and at first, he was avoided and feared because he was the president's son, but after a year of persistent pursuit, they started dating. Now she works as Robert's secretary, managing his schedule and other tasks. She's very beautiful, so Robert seems to keep an eye on her when they go to business meetings with clients because she's often seduced. This time, she said that wearing a wedding ring would improve the situation a bit, but I wonder how it will turn out. The issue of fraudulent loans and illegal interest at Robert's bank has been covered in TV news and magazines, and the word bankruptcy comes to mind, but apparently, many of the clients who attended that wedding, including me, want to support Robert's efforts and encouraged him. Instead of closing their accounts, it seems they even supported him. However, it was difficult to rebuild, but Robert's natural intelligence enabled him to come up with new solutions one after another, considering the future. By cleaning up inside the bank, it seems that customer trust is increasing instead. Surely Robert will recover in no time. Several months have passed since then, and things have settled down a lot, so I occasionally visit Robert's new home. Both Robert and his wife Mary seem to be bad at household chores in general, so I joked, "Here's a housekeeping service," and helped out with the housework when I visited. By the way, They seem to use my company's housekeeping service regularly. I'm grateful that they are such good customers. When I visit, I treat them to my specialty dishes. At times like this, it's definitely beef stew. With practiced hands, I cut the potatoes and carrots into rough chunks, dice the onions, cut the meat into bite-sized pieces, and dust with flour. I quietly cook the dish. It seemed to be Robert's first time seeing me cook, as he watched with wide eyes. Mary also watched, saying, "You're very efficient." Feeling embarrassed to be praised, on the one hand, but feeling nervous and fidgety because both of them were watching me, I managed to make the beef stew. When I offered them the beef stew I had plated, Mary was surprised at my cooking. "I've never had such delicious food." Robert also complimented, "As always, you're good. This gentle taste is so comforting." I'm happy when they enjoy my cooking, and we spend a pleasant meal time together. Beef stew is versatile, you know. You can make spaghetti or potato au gratin with the leftovers. Since I made a bit too much, why don't you try making something with it tomorrow? I suggested to Mary. The original beef stew is so delicious. I think I'll try making spaghetti with it, she said. The other day, Mary's sister, Linda, came to visit, so I treated her to my cooking as well. Linda stared at me while I cooked, and when I thought about it, she helped me cut the vegetables. It turns out that Linda, unlike her sister Mary, has recently become interested in cooking and has been obsessed with it. Linda and I stood side by side in the kitchen, eating the finished dish.
It's incredibly delicious. I'd love for you to teach me how to cook.
It's thanks to your help.
I just help cut the vegetables. I've only recently started cooking, so I can handle the basics of cutting, boiling, and frying, but I can't seem to get the seasoning right.
After being earnestly begged, she ended up coming to my house to learn how to cook next time. I'm teased by my employees for being so good at housework and having a domestic wife, but I'm still a man.
Can I come to your house?
Linda asked me with upturned eyes, and I couldn't help but gulp, but I convinced myself that it was just to teach her how to cook. Glancing at Linda, I saw her long hair tied up and her pink lips glistening. I involuntarily swallowed again, but what am I thinking? Pull yourself together, me, I told myself. I invited her to my house right away and introduced her to the ingredients, seasonings, and cooking utensils. Linda was desperately taking notes, looking very adorable. As I teach her to cook, she improves rapidly, and a few months later, she sometimes comes to my house unexpectedly saying, "I made it at home. Would you like to eat it together?" We spent times like friends, and I finally worked up the courage to invite her on a date, which she accepted. It was a very cold winter day. On the way back from the date, with Christmas approaching, the town was illuminated, and there seemed to be more couples than usual. In front of the big Christmas tree at the station, reluctant to say goodbye, and I confessed boldly, "Linda, I've really enjoyed cooking with you. I'd like to continue cooking together and spend time dating like this. If you're okay with it, would you go out with me?" In front of the Christmas tree. A grown man, in front of the illumination. There were some passers-by's glances, and it was a bit embarrassing, but Linda agreed with a slightly red face. And now, we're even having dates developing new recipes at home. When those recipes work out well, I also teach them to the employees of the housekeeping service company, and it seems that there are some cases where the employees make them at the customers' places, and it becomes a big hit. With this and that, the company has grown larger, to the point of employing a considerable number of employees. Recently, there have been talks of TV and magazine features like Hot Topic, getting inside the housekeeping service company. And above all, what surprised me the most was, how about publishing the recipes we developed as a book? Surprisingly, a customer who was impressed by the recipe made by the employees at their place turned out to be someone working at a publishing company, and they came back with a suggestion to publish a recipe book. Since Linda's contribution was significant in developing this recipe, I immediately consulted her. She seemed quite enthusiastic, saying, "Wow, our recipe becoming a book. Please, let's do it." So, we decided to take on this opportunity. Now, not only are we developing recipes together, but we're also busy with writing. At the same time, I secretly went to look for our rings. By the time this recipe book is completed, I hope we'll have the same last name, fantasizing about it. In today's world, where even high school graduates are often criticized, having only a high school diploma might be quite rare in the US. Certainly, having an education might make success easier. However, I don't think education and success in society are equal. In fact, I entered society without being fixated on my education, and now I'm running a company as its president. It might seem like hindsight, but there are plenty of successful people who are just high school graduates. Like the parents of Robert, if you become arrogant and stuck up about your education, no matter how excellent it is, you'll fall into a pit. It's natural to care about your education to some extent. But I think everyone should challenge what they want to do without being fixated on their education and live freely, making the most of their strengths in society.